It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to go over Matrix and we're going to set up the server using Dendrite. So if you've watched my past video, we set it up using Synapse. I went back through that and I was trying to get everything set up and running. I just kept running into issues, and one of the things that I found was a lot of people said that Synapse is a really heavy server and that you need more resource to run it. So I started looking around. I found Dendrite, which is another Matrix project, which is basically built off of Synapse, but they're working it out in Go language, so that's interesting. And it's supposed to be a little bit lighter weight for usage. So again, us being self-hosters and people who want to maybe run something for our family or our small business, things like that, I think this is going to be a really great option. The best news is we're going to go through not just setting up the server itself, but we're going to make sure that we've got our admin user set up and our other users set up, and we're going to set up the complete federation system for it so that you can actually get connected to other Matrix servers if you want to. It's completely optional to do that. But on my last video, a lot of people were asking me, hey, how do I set up the federation? And I never really got that to work either, so I'll go through how I did it this time and got it functioning and everything is up and running. So I wanted to go through Matrix with you guys today and just show you what you can do with it. It's really great. And then in a follow-up video, we're going to set up our own turn server. So if you want to use video and audio chat with anything like Matrix, but with other systems as well, with Nexttalk. That's on Nextcloud. So they have Nexttalk, which is a really cool way to communicate if you have a Nextcloud system already set up. But again, you need a turn server a lot of times when you're behind NAT, which most of us are. If you're running on a home system, you're probably behind a NAT system, which means you've got a firewall, you've got an incoming thing from your ISP, and then you're inside of a private network that uses network address translation to get information back and forth between you and the internet. So a lot of times you need a turn server to make everything function really well with video and audio chat. So we want to make sure we get that set up as well, but we're going to do that in the future on the next video so that you'll have that part set as well. So yeah, we've got a whole lot of really cool stuff coming, and we're going to start with Matrix and the Dendrite server right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. In order to get our Matrix server up and running, we're going to need a few things, and you're going to want to have these things set up and ready. So the first thing is I'm going to set this up on a LXC container inside of Proxmox. Now you can use a regular virtual machine. You can use a LXD container. It is completely up to you how you do this, but it needs to be able to run Docker because we're going to use the Docker version of the Dendrite server. I think this makes it much simpler to get it set up and running. For those of you that don't like Docker, however, there are other images out there and available. So if you go, I'll have these links in the show notes and the description for you guys so you can jump straight to these things. But here's the regular Dendrite installation. They've got all your requirements. They've got your get started. They've got all of the different instructions for you to do that. We're not going to go through this one today. This is really up to you if you want to do this route. We're going to do the Docker install. The Docker install is pretty straightforward. I'm going to walk you through it. It's going to take us maybe 15-20 minutes to do it. I'll try to explain as much as I can, like always, so that you'll really understand what's going on. If you're somebody who's much more technical, you may not need me to explain this. I'd love you to watch the video anyways, just to make sure that if you have questions, hopefully I've answered at some point in the video. But if not, always drop me a comment. I'll do my best to answer questions. Now, I'm not the person who makes this project. I'm just letting you know about this project so that you can go out there and try it. So if you have too detailed the questions, I might get you to come over here to the GitHub and actually post an issue or post a question that way, or jump into one of their Matrix rooms to post a question using matrix.org, things like that. So there are other options to get answers. So I'm going to use an LXC container and install Docker on it, and I'll walk you through that process. The other thing you're going to want to have is a proxy, a reverse proxy. So I use NGinX Proxy Manager. It allows me to set up different reverse proxies so that I have these different URLs that I can get back to inside of my home network or a business network, or however you're setting this up. So I'm going to use NGinX Proxy Manager. You can use any reverse proxy that you want to. I just happen to like this one. It's fairly easy for me to use and pretty easy for me to show you how to set it up as well. The last thing you're going to need is a domain name that you own. So a domain name that you own means maybe you own the domain that's called mybestchat.org. Okay. If you own mybestchat.org, you've got it registered with a registrar, and inside of that registrar's tools, there should be DNS settings. You need to be able to set an A record in your DNS for that registrar for your domain, and we're going to create a subdomain. So we're going to call this, and we'll just say we call it chat.yourbestdomain.org. You want to be able to set an A record that points this to your public IP address. Now, if you have a public IP address that changes all the time, like very frequently, you might want to set up something like DuckDNS where you can get a different address that updates whenever your IP updates so that it keeps you connected. But you do need to have something where you can set up this A record first. Make sure this A record just says, hey, take this name and point it to my public IP address. That's all it's telling it to do. That's a DNS record you have to set up. The next thing we're going to do is go in and set up our server. We're going to get things up and running and installed. And then the last bit we'll do is set up our reverse proxy. And then we'll set up a couple of things to make sure that we can actually get federation going. And for that, you're going to need to be able to port forward a specific port through your firewall from the outside internet to the inside of your network to the machine that's running your Matrix server once it's up and running. And then finally, we'll go through setting up some accounts real quick. And we'll talk briefly about the different clients that are available for Matrix. So this will probably be about a 25-30 minute video. I think it's going to be great. So let's get started. All right, I'm going to start from the very beginning. So for those of you who already have a server set up, you already have Docker and everything installed, you can feel free to skip ahead. I'll have timestamps down here so you can just kind of figure out where you want to start and where you want to go to. You don't have to watch all the way through these parts if you already know how to do it. But for those who don't, we're going to create an LXC container in Proxmox. Now you can just use a virtual machine, you can use an LXC container, you can use an LXD container, it's up to you. But you need some kind of base system. You can use just a machine you have off to the side, like a computer that you're going to put Ubuntu on if that's what you want, or whatever version of Linux you want, but you need to be able to get Docker installed on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an LXC container, and I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to say create CT. I'm going to call this thing chat. And I'm going to give it a password so I can log in as the admin to it. Always give it a nice strong password. We're just going to click next. Now from the images for my CTs, I'm going to pick my Ubuntu 2204. Now as this goes down the road, you may want to pick a newer version of Ubuntu. I always use long-term support versions for servers, but if it's 2024 and 2404 is out for a couple of months, you might want to use that one. Next thing we need to do is pick where do we want to store this. So in this case, I want to give this a good amount of space, so it doesn't have to be lightning fast for this to work either. So this one I've got 12 terabytes in this large pool, so I'm just going to choose that one, and I'm going to give it 500 gigabytes. There we go, 500 gigabytes. And I don't need to check any of those items. On the CPU, in fact, I'll undo that. I'm going to give it 2 CPU cores. Now, again, depending on how many cores you have available, may depend on how many you want to give it. But if you have a lot, you could give it 4, you could give it 8. It just depends on how much you think this is going to be used. If it's going to be used by hundreds and thousands of people, definitely give it many more cores. Memory, I'm going to give this 8 gigs, so that's 8096, and swap, same thing, 8096. On the network, first I'm going to let it do DHCP, just so it grabs an address, and then I'll go back and set it static for that address on my network. So for now, just take DHCP on your IPv4. DNS, nothing to mess with, and then custom or confirm, we're just going to confirm it and hit go. It's going to create that real quick. It should only take a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds. There, it's done. And we're going to wait for it to show up over here. And there it is. And now we're just going to click, right click on it, click start to get it going. I'll click on it, and we're going to click on the console. So I'm going to do a couple of things here in the console. I'll try to remember to zoom in on this. And I'm going to log in with my root user. So the first thing we need to do is update everything. So we're going to do apt update and then apt upgrade -y. So with an ampersand, 2 ampersands between them, that tells it to do both commands. So if you don't prefer to sit here and watch an update happen, I'm just going to jump ahead in time a little bit. All right, now that that's complete, we need to create a non-root user. So I'm going to do add user, and this is only for Ubuntu Debian systems. If you're using SUSE or Fedora, you're going to do user add. Just reverse those 2 words, but they're pushed together. I'm going to put in the username I want. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to give this user a password. And again. And then it's going to ask you some questions. You can fill them out or leave them blank like I am. Then hit Y to confirm, and it's done. Now we need to make our user a non-root but sudo user. So we're going to say user mod -a capital G, which means modify this user and add them to the group sudo, and then the username that you want. And you can put a list of usernames if there's more than one, but in this case it's just me. And now I'm part of the sudo group. So I'm just going to do a reboot of the server here. The nice thing about LXC containers is they reboot really fast. I'm going to log in one more time as root, and I'm going to get the IP address of this thing. So I'm going to do IP-BR space -C A like this. So it's IP-BR-C space A, and then we've got the IP address, which is 73. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to go over here to my networking here, and I'm going to click on this. I'm going to change this to static. I'm going to put that in as 192.168.10.73/24. And then my gateway is 192.168.10.1. Just going to click on OK. And I'm going to go back to the console. And I'm just going to say reboot one more time, just so it'll pick that up and pull it into the static address this time. And now I'm actually going to open up my regular terminal here. So I'm going to SSH into that machine as my non-root user, and I'm going to clear that out. So I've already updated and upgraded every package on the machine. I've created my non-root user. I've given my non-root user sudo privileges. I've set a static IP address on my network, and now I'm logged in as that user. So the next thing we need to do is make a couple of folders. So the easiest way to do this, do mkdir-p docker and then /matrix. So what this says is check and see if the Docker directory exists, and if it does, use it. If not, create it. Then check and see if the matrix folder exists inside of that folder, and if it does, use it. If not, create it. So it's going to do all that in one step, which is great. We're going to move into that folder with cd docker/matrix. All right, we've created this folder structure. Now we need to install Docker and Docker Compose. So we're just going to go back to our home directory here. And we're going to use this wget command here, which is wget-o, which means the output file should be named install-docker.sh. And it's going to pull it down from our repository out there on GitLab. And there we go. And we're going to change the permissions on that file to chmod +x install-docker.sh. And then we're just going to run it with /install-docker.sh. So this is going to run a script that's going to help us pull down Docker CE, Docker Compose, and NGinX Proxy Manager if you need it. I already have it installed on my network, but if you don't, and you need a reverse proxy, then this is one that you can install. So I'll show you how it works. So it's going to come up and tell you what it finds. So it sees this is a Ubuntu 2204.3 LTS jammy. So if we look here, 2204 is number 4, so I'm just going to hit 4. It's going to ask me for my super user password. And then I'm going to say, yes, I want Docker CE. Yes, I want Docker Compose. I don't need NGinX Proxy Manager, but if you do, you would type Y. I'm going to hit N. And then I'm going to hit N for the rest of these options here because I don't need them. And it's going to go through and try to update the packages. So I run the package updates ahead of time just to save time. And it's going to install our prerequisite packages that we need for Docker and Docker Compose. And now it's going to install Docker CE. Tells us what version of Docker CE we got. Now it's going to install Docker Compose after it sets our user as a user in the Docker group. Then it's going to install Docker Compose, tells us the version, and it sets up a default network for us that's not like the regular default Docker network. So we're pretty much set. Everything should be here and ready, but the one thing we need to do is reboot one more time. So that'll reboot the system, and once it reboots, we can log right back in. It only takes about 10 or 15 seconds for an LXC container to reboot, so that's really nice. There we go. And now that we're in, we should have Docker, and we can do Docker PS to test it out. And you can see there's nothing running, but we do have the ability to run Docker PS without using the sudo command every time. So now we're going to just go back into the Docker/matrix folder with cd docker matrix. And we're going to do a wget to actually go and pull down the Docker Compose file that we need. And if we do ls, we'll see Docker Compose.yaml is down. And if we do a nano of Docker Compose.yaml, so that's our text editor, we'll see it open up and everything is already here and kind of set. Now there's a few things we want to change about the way that this is set up. So first of all, these volumes, I like to do / so that they all get put inside of the parent folder, which is Docker Matrix. So that'll create a folder called Dendrite Postgres Data, and it's going to be mapped to the container that's /var/lib/postgresql/data. That just means all of our data is going to be stored inside of this Docker folder where we're putting everything. So here, where they've got this password, we want to change this to something long and strong, and you want to make sure it's a really good password, but just change it to anything you want. It should just be a bunch of capital, lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, things like that. Just keep it long and powerful. So we'll just go with something like that. Maybe not the period. I don't know what that'll do to a Postgres database, but there we go. We've got a long password. That's great. You leave the username and the database name the same. We're going to move on down past this because that's just our health check. Nothing to change there. And then right here, we've got this part that says it's the monolith. So this is going to be the part that actually runs the Matrix server. And it's going to run on 8008, so ports 8008 and 8448. If you need, for some reason, to change this port on the left side, that's the port on the host where it's going to be running. In my case, I don't, but if you need to, you can. Just change it to a port that's not one that's determined to be pre-used by the system and not currently in use by the system. Don't change the port on the right side, only on the left side of the colon. Next thing is the volume, so that you can see they've got a /config folder here. That's great. And then down here they've got some other ones. So again, I'm going to put a / in front of these because I want them all to be inside of this parent folder, this Docker Matrix. As we go down, you can see that it's got a thing where it's got to have Postgres, and the service needs to be healthy before it will start running, which is good. It checks to see if the database is there, it can communicate, and the database service is healthy. Next is internal, and then unless stopped, which is great. And then it just names our different volumes. That's awesome. So we've made the few little changes that we need. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to have this password in a little bit, so we'll get it. I'm just going to recheck everything here real quick and make sure everything looks good. I think it does. Everything looks good. All right, we're going to hit Control-O for save, and then we're going to hit Enter to confirm, and then we're going to do Control-X to exit. And we have our Docker Compose file. Now we have to generate some keys in order for Dendrite to work correctly. So we have a special command that we're going to run in order to generate those keys. And it's going to run it right from this folder. So if we run it from this Docker Matrix folder, everything is going to be right where it needs to be. So I'm going to paste this command in. And this command, in fact, let me Control-C out of that, clear this out, and we'll paste it up here. There we go. So this is Docker run, and then we're going to remove it after we run it. And the entry point doesn't have to be set. It's going to create a volume, which is in our current directory, and then it's going to map that to /mnt inside of the container. So it's going to pull down the matrix.org Dendrite monolith image, the latest one, and it's going to start it running. It's going to run the command user bin generate keys. It's going to create a key called the private key. And it's going to put it in /mnt/matrix key.pem inside the container. It's going to create our TLS cert, and it's going to put that in /mnt/server/crt inside of our container. And then one called TLS key, and that's going to be in /mnt/server.key inside of our container. So it's going to put everything inside of the container, and then it's just going to jump right back out. So we're going to let that run. It's going to pull that stuff down. And now that it's finishing out the extraction, it's going to start the container running. And it ran that and it created them. So if we do an ls, we'll see we've got those files right here because remember it mapped our current location to this /mnt directory. So we can see them. We've got our matrix key.pem, server.crt, and server.key. It's fine to leave them right where they're at, nothing to do with them. Just know that they are there and that you need them. The next thing we need is our YAML for Dendrite, our configuration file. So we're going to copy that down into this folder. So we're going to use wget again to go grab their sample file, and it's going to save it in the config folder, and it's going to be called dendrite.yaml. Now if you look right here, we don't have a config folder yet. So let's create that before we do this. So you can use Control-C to jump out of that command. So I'm going to say mkdir config. I'm going to correct my spelling with move, C-O-N-I-F-G to C-O-N-F-I-G, config, so it'll be spelled correctly. I'm going to clear out the terminal. I'm going to paste in the command we need, and I'm just going to run it. Now if I go and I do nano config / dendrite.yaml, you'll see that it's there, and you can see this is a really long file. They give you a lot of really good information in these comments. Anything with a hashtag in front of it is a comment. It's commented out. It means that the system won't read it. Any line without the hashtag, that's not a continuation of the line above anyways, is a setting, and you need to kind of know what those settings are. You don't need to change a lot of them, but you do need to know what they are. And we'll start right here at the top. And the first thing you're going to hook to is the version 2. Just leave that alone. That's fine. The next thing here is the host name. So I've already set mine in here, and it's chat.routemehome.org is what we're setting up. So you would set your host name for that server in there, the URL that you want for that server to use. The next one is important. So this is where it's going to look for the private key, which is /mnt/matrixkey.pem. So you've got to keep in mind that it's got to be looking in the right place. So when you pull it down, it's just going to have this. It's going to say matrix_key.pem. But if you remember, when we created those files, it actually mapped your current directory, which for me was in the matrix or in the docker/matrix folder, to /mnt. So we want to add /mnt and then another slash here so that it knows to look in the right place. And then we're going to modify our Docker Compose file to add this mapping for the /mnt as well, so that it knows where to look for these files, and everything will work out pretty well. So don't worry about it too much. But this is just one change you'll probably want to make sure everything works correctly. If you're getting errors about that it can't find the matrix key for some reason, this is probably one of the problems, and then maybe the volume mapping in the Docker Compose file. So as we continue down, a lot of this stuff is going to be commented out, and it's fine. Just leave it commented out. I'll mention the things that you probably want to look at and change. So again, this thing here for the key validity period, just leave it alone unless you know what you're doing. You can change it. The next thing you want to change is this connection string. So here where it says user, you want to put Dendrite like I have here, because that's the user we set in our Docker Compose. Also in our Docker Compose, we created a very long, strong password. You'll want to go copy that and then paste it right here before the @ symbol. You see the @ symbol? Just make sure your password does not have an @ symbol in it. And then here you're going to want to put this exact word. If you're doing everything I'm doing and you're creating your folder structure the same way, you're going to want to put matrix-postgres-1 and then a slash, and then leave everything else the same. So what you're going to have here is probably hostname / you want to erase hostname, and you want to put it in where it says matrix-postgres-1. This is going to be the name of the container when we actually start up the Docker Compose file, and you'll want to make sure that everything there is set correctly so that it'll connect like it needs to. So as we move down, we're going to use the 1 GB cache size. That should be plenty. There's no reason to change that I'm aware of. If you need to for some reason, if you have a really huge system that's just hosting tens of thousands of users, maybe you'll have to change this. But if you're doing this for a home server, for a small business, 100 users, probably you don't need to change this at all. Max age 1 hour, that's fine. So now here, the well-known server name, you'll probably just see two sets of double quotes that are empty, nothing in them. You'll want to put this structure, so your URL without the HTTP or anything, just for me, chat.routemehome.org. We want to make sure I get this spelled correctly. And then :443, so you want to put whatever your URL is and then :443. As we move down, we're going to use https://chat.routemehome.org here. Now these are very important for you to make sure that your clients can connect and that you can do federation. It's not just for federation, but it's important that your clients can also use this to connect. So people that are using client apps on their phones or on their desktops, things like that, you need to make sure these are set correctly. These two things are fine as they are. Matrix.org and vector.im for identity is great. If you're going to set up your own identity server, that's a whole other thing. I'm not going to go through that right now. I might do it in a future video, but I don't know yet. But just be aware, you may want to just leave these alone if you're not setting up your own identity server. And if you are, you need to know how to change this and what to use. Disable federation, so I have this set to false. If you're not wanting to federate, if you're just wanting to run your server as a standalone server, then you'll want to change this to true. If you want these items turned on, make sure you set these to enabled equals true. Report stats. So this is statistics that would go to matrix.org just for them to understand how you're using your server, what the server usage is, how the server's behaving, things like that. It is all it is all absolutely non-private data only. If it's private data, they don't try to get it, they don't want to take it, nothing like that. It's up to you if you want to make this true or not. If you make it true, you're just helping them improve the product over time, so understand that. But if you don't want to make it true, you can just leave this as false. Just know that. If you don't mind sharing, change this to true, all lowercase, and then just leave this URL alone, and it'll do what it does. So if you want to allow server notices for your admin account to be able to send messages to all users on the server, then you would set this to true. And I think it's a useful thing because maybe you want to let them know, like, hey, this server is going to be down for maintenance for a little while, things like that. But that means anyone who has an admin role can send out those notices. So just be aware that you're turning that on when you do. I think you can leave everything else here the same. I don't think you need to turn anything else different. So just leave the rest of that as default. So the app service API, everything here, I just left as it is. I didn't change anything. This one is important though. Registration disabled, true. That means registration is disabled. You will have to create the accounts by hand. If you want to enable registration, you would change this to registration disabled is false. But then you need to set up some other things. You need to make sure your email is set up in here, which I don't have even in this file right now. You need to make sure that you've got reCAPTCHA turned on and set up correctly, everything like that. There's a lot going into registration to make sure that you're not creating a server where a bunch of people can get on and start spamming everybody. Even if you don't enable registration, so if you keep it registration disabled, true, like I have it here, which means nobody can register on their own, you can set a password. So you'd set a long, strong passphrase right here, and then share that with the people who you want to allow to register. After you've done that and maybe given them a day to go and register, you might want to change this so that it doesn't accidentally leak out and you do again get spammers trying to register for your site. But worthwhile to know that you can set this up and they can use that passphrase. So again, reCAPTCHA has to be set up for registration. There's a lot of things that have to be set up if you want to use that. So just be aware of that. They've got a little bit of default stuff here that you could try, but nothing that I'm turning on because again, I'm not enabling registration on my server. So on the turn certificates, so if you want to have your server be able to make video calls, phone calls, things like that, but audio calls, not phone calls, but audio calls and video calls, you need to set up a turn server. I highly recommend that you just set up your own co-turn server. I'm going to go into a video on how to do that next time and kind of explain how that works. And it's useful for a lot of things. It's not just for Matrix, but for Nextcloud, all kinds of different things where you want to use turn as a way to communicate behind a firewall inside of a network with video and audio. It's very useful. As we continue down, so right here, this is just an example of if you wanted to rate limit, you can, so this has rate limits already turned on. But if you wanted someone to be exempt from the rate limits, you would just take out this little hashtag there and then put in the @ and the username for that server, and then you'd put in the actual server after the colon, just like this. And now that person is allowed to post without rate limits. If you don't want to do that, just leave it commented out and don't put anybody else on the list. If you want to add other people to the list, you again remove the comment, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, add a hyphen, and then add the next person, and chat.routemehome.org in my case. You would put your server name, of course, and now you've got 2 people who can do this without a rate limit. So it's up to you if you want to do that or not. Just be aware that's what it is, and that's how you turn it, that's how you enable it, and then make sure that it's not set for certain people. So I'm going to just put a hashtag back on there. So this part is for the Federation API itself. There's really nothing you need to change. Everything here should just be left as it is as far as I recall. Let's go down and kind of check some of those other settings. Yes, everything here that was default I just left alone. I didn't change any of it. This is how it came in the file. So on the max file size right here, this is going to be 10 megabytes. If you want this to be bigger than 10 megabytes, you can change this. You can double this number essentially and make it 20 megabytes. You can make it 40 megabytes, whatever you want to do. But it's tied to how it works in your reverse proxy. And if you're using a reverse proxy like NGinX, then you would have to go in and set this as also the client max body size setting in NGinX. So I haven't done that, so I'm just going to leave this as 10 megabytes because it seems like a plenty big enough type thing for an attachment to me. Dynamic thumbnails is false. Again, don't change any of these things unless you have a reason to and you know what you're doing. So this real IP header is kind of up to you to use. We're going to put it behind a reverse proxy. Now, I haven't had an issue with anything except one client, and maybe if I would turn this on for my other server, it would work better. I may try that, but I've left it disabled and everything seems to be working fine right now behind a reverse proxy, so I haven't turned it on. But if you do have issues or you're seeing sync issues, you could come and just again remove that hashtag and you should be set. If you don't need it removed, just put the hashtag back and it'll comment it back out. Configuration for the full text search engine. I left all this stuff as it is. I didn't change anything here, but it's up to you. The language is defaulted to English EN, so if you have a different language that you're wanting to use, make sure it's a supported language, and then you can change that to the 2-letter combination for the language you want. The bcrypt cost here, this just says how many times or how many rounds is it going to go when it's encrypting data and encrypting information. The higher you go, the more intense it is on the CPU and the machine itself. They say around 14 probably is about 20 minutes of encryption, so just be aware of that. So you probably don't want to put it too high. 10 is really pretty good. I'd say leave it there unless you have a reason to make it higher. You might get away with 12 if you have a really powerful machine. I'm not going to run this on a super powerful machine, so I'm not going to do that, but I'd say leave it at 10 unless you have a reason to change it again. So this one here on the auto join rooms. Whenever you create new users, you can have them auto join a room. So what I've done is I've set this up as hashtag main for the room name and then colon, again, my server. So you'd want to make this whatever room name you want. You can name this room whatever you want. You just need to remember to create a room once you're logged in the first time that actually has this name. And then it can be your server name right here. And then when you create a new user, they'll be automatically added to this room. So they'll at least be in one room on your server, and then they can start chatting or doing private chats or direct messages if they want to. And then finally on open tracing and logging, there's nothing to change, and that's really the file right there. We've gone through it, the dendrite.yaml file. Hopefully you've got everything saved and set up. So I'm just going to hit, so you're going to hit Control O to save, and then hit Enter to confirm. And then you're going to hit Control X to exit out, and we're just going to say no for that one on mine. But you should be set with your dendrite.yaml file, so we're just going to do cd ... Now we're going to go into nano docker compose.yaml because we want to go in here and change one thing, and I'll show you what it is. So we were talking about that matrix key.pem. We want to make sure that we've got the right volume set so that it can find where that's at. So we're going to go down here to the monolith section. And you'll see right here I set another volume item. So all you have to do, I'll just get rid of this so it looks exactly like yours, and we'll just go in and add it again right here. So we're going to go down here and we're just going to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, hit a hyphen, and we're going to do ./ which just means in the current folder, which is where our keys are at. We're going to hit a colon, and that means map it, and we're going to put that to /mnt. We're going to hit Control O to save, Enter to confirm. Everything else should already be set up here from earlier, so you shouldn't have to change anything else. And we're going to hit Control X to exit. And we're pretty much ready to start up our Docker Compose file and pull down everything and get our system running. All right, to start this up, we're going to do Docker Compose up-d and then 2 ampersands Docker Compose logs-f. Now, I've already pulled everything down once, the images and things, but I don't have anything set for volumes yet, so you're going to see this go up a little bit faster. You might see yours actually pulling everything down the first time you run this. Just be patient. It should come up and show you logs after everything's running. So once this gets going, it's going to start up the Postgres database, and you'll see it change from creating to waiting. So it's waiting, and really it's waiting for it to start, and once it starts, then this is going to start going. The monolith is going to start going. There it goes. We're going to get our logs. It's going to give us some information. So it says it's starting the external listener, so everything should be up, everything should be running. We've got some information up here that says it looks like it's good. So once you kind of see this message that it says it's listening on a certain port, which is 8008, we're going to go open up our browser, open up a new tab, and we're going to go to the IP address of our server. And you'd want to go to the IP address of yours, and then port 8008, so that's 192.168.10.73 for me. And then colon 8008, and you should see something like this. Now I have the dark stuff turned on here. I can disable that real quick. It's going to look like this. I apologize, it's bright, But this is how you'll know that things are up and running, and it's going to tell you it works. Dendrite is running. So that's good. We've gotten this far. That's great. Now we know that's running. The next thing we want to do is actually start setting up our reverse proxy so that we can get everything running the way we expect. So I'm going to go into NGinX Proxy Manager, and I'm going to hit add a new proxy right here. And right here I'm just going to type in the name of my server, or the URL for my server. Just like that. And I'm going to hit tab just to make sure it turns into a little chip like that. If you don't, it may not show up there. I'm going to drop down here to the IP address, and I'm going to put in 192.168.10.73. And over here I'm going to put in 8008. I'm not going to cache assets actually. I'm going to block common exploits. I'm going to do WebSocket support. And I'm just going to click save before I do anything else. I'm going to get it set right here. I'm just going to click on it, and it should come right to that same page. So it's in dark mode again, but you see it's there. So everything's good. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back out here to the right for that entry. I'm going to hit edit. And I'm going to go over here to SSL. I'm going to go request SSL certificate. I'm going to say force SSL HTTP2 support. And I'm going to make sure everything's there. I'm going to turn on this, and I'm going to hit save. So this is going to go out to Let's Encrypt, say, hey, I've got a site. I want you to challenge it. Make sure you can reach it on port 80. And if you can, give me an actual CA certificate for it. So it's really nice. This makes it really easy. And it did it. So it should say Let's Encrypt when you're done. That little pop-up should just go away on its own. And then you'll see Let's Encrypt on this row. And now if we click, we're going to see that it's got a certificate, and it's secured with SSL. So now we're reaching our Matrix site through SSL, which is awesome. Now we need to create a user. So we've done all of the hard part. We've got everything up and running. We're just going to hit Control-C here on the logs. We'll clear this out, and we need to create a user. To do that, we need to jump into our running system, into our container. So we're going to do Docker space exec space -it, which this means execute and then give me an interactive terminal. And then I'm going to tell it which one I want. I want matrix-monolith, and then I can hit tab, it'll fill it out. And I want /bin/sh. So there I am. I'm inside of my Dendrite running monolith container. So to create my first user, I'm going to do Control-Shift-V here to paste, and we're going to look at this command. So we're going to go to /user/bin/create account. This is where this create account command is at, /user/bin. And then we're going to say -config, and we're going to tell it where the dendrite.yaml config is at. So it's inside the container, it's in /etc/dendrite/dendrite.yaml. Then we're going to say -username, and here we're going to put in the name that we want. So we want to create an admin account that is not our normal account, like our normal usage account. So I'm going to call this Brian_admin. So this will be my admin account. I won't normally log into this unless I'm doing admin things. And then we're going to put -admin at the end. So it should look like this: user bin create account -config. Tell it where the config is, -username, and then your username_admin is a good idea. And then -admin so that it knows it's creating an admin account. I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to ask me for a password. I'm going to give it a nice strong password here. And one more time. Now you should really use a password manager to generate these passwords and then paste them in there just so you have them saved somewhere. That's always better, but I'm going to destroy this after we're done with this video. Created account, so it says here's your account and here's your access token. So this is a very special token you need to save. So you want to grab this thing and you want to save this also to somewhere where you can get it again. So we're done with that part. Now we can create other accounts. So we can do this again. We can hit the up arrow, and instead of saying admin, I'm just going to take that part off. I'm going to take off the admin part, and I'm just going to create it with username Brian, and it's going to ask me for a password, so I'll give it another strong password here, and confirm it. And there we go. And you see I get a different account, or a different access token for that non-admin user. So now I've got 2 users, which is great. You can add more users as you go, and you just keep repeating this. So you can do this for Bill. And again, create a nice password for Bill. And then you can do the same thing over and over and over. You want to keep grabbing these access tokens. These are useful whenever you're going to actually set up your login. So now that we've got that, we actually want to test this out and see if we can chat. So we're going to go to let's see. We're going to go to app.element.io. So when you first come to the app.element.io webpage, you're going to see this option. You'll see sign in, create account, and explore rooms. If you go to create account and actually try to do that with your server, it's not going to work because you haven't enabled registration, and we did that intentionally. Now, if you enabled registration, you could probably do this. But we're going to go to sign in because we already created our account. But right here where it says matrix.org, we need to hit edit. We're going to type in our URL, chat.routemehome.org. We're going to hit continue, and it should come back and say everything's good. Okay, it's going to say home server, and we want to sign in with our username, which I created a normal user called Brian, and I'll give it my password here, and we're going to say sign in. Now I don't have to say save here, and I'm here. So everything looks good. Help improve element. I'm going to say no. And then there's no rooms. I don't have any chats yet, so I didn't create the main room yet. That's kind of a problem. So I can go down here and I can say add a room. And I can call this main. I can make this a public room, and you should on the first one. And we'll call this main, just like I said, where I wanted it to be the default room. Let's say create the room. And there we go. So now I can invite people to the room if I want to chat with people, and I can, of course, chat in this room. Chat is here. There we go. All right, we've got that set up. We're going, we're working, everything's working good. The next thing you have to do is actually set up port forwarding for port 8448. Now, I can't tell you how to do this because every router on the planet does it different. Every router maker has a different way of setting up port forwarding. You'll have to look it up for whatever your router and operating system are. But you want to set up a forward that goes from the internet into your network for port 8448. Once you've done that, you're going to go to a certain site and it's going to let you test to see whether or not you've actually got everything up and running. So now I've already got it set up for my other server, so I can't forward port 8448 to two different machines inside of my network, so I won't be able to do it for the one we just set up, but I will show it to you for the server that I'm running as my production server. So fortunately, it's a pretty easy URL to remember. It is federationtester.matrix.org. It should bring you to a page like this, and you're just going to type in the URL of your server. So I'm going to put in matrix.routemehome.org, and I'm going to hit go. It's going to go out there and check to see if it can reach my server using port 8448, and it should come back and give you something like this. It says connection report, and it says it connected, and it'll have a bunch of information about your server and your IP address and things like that. So you'll see all kinds of information here that it checked to kind of see what can it do and how does it work. So if you get a good report like that, everything is set up great. If you don't, if it fails for some reason, you may have to go and dig in and make sure all of your settings are correct, make sure all of your ports are set correctly, things like that. But 8448 is going to be the port for Federation. All right, finally, a word on the clients that are out there for Matrix. There are tons. There are tons of clients for the mobile operating systems. There are tons of clients for your desktop operating systems. It's really going to be a personal choice for you. The Element client on iOS doesn't appear to respect the font size settings in iOS and does not have a setting of its own yet. They do have a new app coming out called Element X. However, it requires a new syncing protocol that is not built into the Synapse server or the Dendrite server yet. So hopefully in a few months that'll be built in. We can get an update, we can get everything working, and I can try out Element X. But today it doesn't work with my server, which makes it a problem. The good news is there's other ones out there called like Fluffy Chat is a really nice one on iOS, and it does try to respect the font sizes, although there's some weirdness about it, but I've reported it and they've been very responsive, so I'm hoping for a fix soon on that one. That's great. On the desktop, there's tons, and really in Linux, in Windows, and Mac, you're going to find a bunch of different options. You just need to find the one that you like the best. I'm just using the Element client here on my desktop right now. Pretty basic, pretty great, pretty easy to see, and I kind of like it a lot. So I think it's a pretty nice chat client. Very easy for me to read, which is great, and it's got a nice dark mode, or it's respecting my desktop's dark mode theme, which is awesome. So I've been using it. I did try Cine. I didn't like it as much. Fluffy Chat, I didn't try on the desktop yet, but I think I might if they have a Linux client as well. There's one called Moment that I thought was just terrific, and it works with matrix.org, but it's not working with my server. Now, again, that could be that sync thing set up where I need to set up some stuff, not sync thing, but that sync setup that needs to be done with the xreal IP. So maybe I'll go change that on my server and see if that makes a difference with Moment. It'd be great if it did, because I really like that client. It's very fast. It's a Qt C++ based client. It's really great. So there is a lot of options out there for chat clients. Again, I've set up Coturn, so I'll go through that with you guys to set that up so that you can see what that's doing and working on the next video. But I think this one we've gone really far. You should be able to get in here and chat. You should be able to get people set up in your server. You should be able to get your server set up and running. You should make sure Federation's working. And then we'll get into setting up a turn server so you can actually do some audio and video calling, which will just enhance the experience even more. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the open source journey with us. And I'll talk to you next time. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.